All right, we're going to do our first read aloud today. So you will need your reader's notebook open. So if you haven't got that open yet in another tab, pause the video here, go to Google Classroom, open up your reader's notebook, and then come back when you're ready. All right, so we're all different types of readers, and part of the magic in a reading community is that while we're all distinct readers, we can find connections and learn from one another. So today we're going to read a story about a man whose love of reading drove him to break the law. It's called Richard Wright and the Library Card by William Miller. I'm going to read a couple pages at a time, and then we will stop and jot to record our thoughts. So you will need your reader's notebook open to slide number 11, and we're going to write the title and author of the text and the date at the top. So slide 11 should be your very last slide. And the title, we're going to put the title of the book, which is Richard Wright and the Library Card. And just put whatever the date is here. I am recording this on the 31st, but that is not the date y'all will be doing it. I think we're going to be doing it on either Thursday or Friday, which is September 3rd or September 4th. So whichever day it is for you, just put the date right up there like that. Okay, so a stop and jot means that you're going to write like you're thinking down quickly. Like we're not going to worry so much about capitalization and grammar. You just really want to type your answer quickly. We don't want to spend too much time on it. So an easy way to start a stop and jot is to type like I think, and then we'll fill that in. And we also need to come to slide 10, and we're on page number 1. So let's do the title, which is Richard Wright and the Library Card. And I'm going to make the font a little smaller, so select the text box, and let's just make everything, we'll just go down to like size 12 so everything can fit. Now if you want to, and I suggest doing this so you can easily get to each slide, highlight over the title, click this button right here, insert link, and we want to link this text to slide number 11. So you're going to do slides in this presentation, and then click slide 11. Then click apply. And now when you're looking at your table of contents, you can click it. If you want to change, the color of this, you can, make it go back to black, or you can make it purple, blue, whatever you want. And then just come back to your note page. Now you don't always have to use I think, but it's a good place to start if you don't know how to start writing down your thoughts. All right, so back to our story. Richard loved the sound of words. He loved the stories his mother told about the farm where she grew up. There was a willow tree by a bend in the river, she explained. I dreamed all my girl dreams down there. Richard loved to hear his grandfather tell about the war, how he ran away from his master and fought the rebel army. I was only a boy, his grandfather said proudly, but I fought as well as any man. I fought in the rain and the mud. I carried the flag at the head of the troops. All right, so I'm going to stop and jot here because there's a lot of information we learn about his family. So go back to your reader's notebook, and in our first sticky note, we're going to stop and jot about his family. So what do you know about his family? So you can start with I think or I know. So I know that his mom grew up on a farm. Oops, not far. Grew up on a farm. And his grandfather fought in a war. And Richard loved stories. I also noticed that his grandfather ran away from his master, so maybe this story is set during the period of U.S. slavery. So as you write down what you know about his family, you can almost kind of do it like bullet points, just list out all the details and information that we just learned. Richard longed to read stories on his own, but his family was very poor. They moved often, looking for work in different towns and cities. His father cleaned office buildings, his mother cooked in the kitchens of wealthy white people. Richard had little chance to go to school. His mother taught him when she could, reading the funny papers out loud, sounding each word carefully. Right now you can pause here. I want you to go back into your reader's notebook and add at least 1 or 2 more details that we learn about his family here. So back on slide 11, add in 1 or 2 things right here. When Richard finally learned to read, he couldn't buy or borrow the books he wanted so badly. Books were expensive. The doors of the library were shut against him because he was black. So Richard read whatever he could find. Old newspapers, books without covers pulled from ash cans. When Richard was 17, he caught a bus to Memphis. He hoped to find work, earn enough money to move to Chicago, where he would make a new life for himself in the North. Richard walked the hot streets looking for a job that would be his ticket to freedom. He saw many young men, like himself, searching for the same job, the same way out. He finally found a place in an optician's office. He polished eyeglasses, swept the floors, and ran errands for the white men. As long as he kept his head down, as long as he began every sentence with "Sir," Richard was safe. Right, for our next stop and jot, I want you to think about what Richard's ticket to freedom is. So I'll come back over here. So think about what his hopes are when he goes to Memphis and what he ends up, the job he gets, what he has to do. What do you think his main goal is? What does it mean he was looking for a job that would be his ticket to freedom? So feel free to rewind so you can see both pages and then come back over here and type your answer. What do you think Richard's ticket to freedom is? At night, Richard returned to the boarding house where he had rented a room. To save money, he ate beans from the can, warmed by water from the tap. Listening to the noise of the street below his window, Richard felt a familiar hunger for words. There were thousands of books in the public library, but only white people could get a card, could take them out. But Richard had an idea. At work, he looked around the office, trying to find one man who might understand his hunger for books. So he uses this twice. So hunger for words and hunger for books. So for our next question, next stop and jot, I want you to think about what that could mean. So hunger for words, hunger for books. So think about, is there ever a book that you just couldn't put down and that you had to finish it? So keep that in mind. Come over here and type what you think it means to hunger for books. For the most part, they were like so many white men he had known before. They would never understand a black boy who wanted a library card, a black boy who wanted to read books even they didn't read. Only one man seemed different from the others. Jim Falk kept to himself, and the other men ignored him, as they ignored Richard. Several times, Richard had been sent to the library to check out books for him. One day, when the other men were out to lunch and Jim was eating alone at his desk, Richard approached him. "I need your help," Richard said. "Are you in some kind of trouble?" Jim asked with a suspicious look. "I want to read books. I want to use a library, but I can't get a card," Richard said, hoping Jim would not laugh in his face. "What do you want to read?" Jim asked, cautiously. "Novels, plays, history?" Richard felt confused. His mind was racing so fast he couldn't think of a single book. Jim said nothing but reached into his desk and brought up a worn, white card. He handed it to Richard. "How will you use it?" Jim asked. "I'll write a note," Richard said, "like the ones you wrote when I got books for you." "All right," Jim said nervously, "but don't tell anyone else. I don't want to get into trouble." "No, sir," Richard promised. "I'll be careful." So we just met this new character, Jim. So I want you to think about what kind of person he is and how do you know? So we know he's given Richard his library card to use. So what do you think that means? If you need this page, go ahead and click pause. If you need this one, go ahead and click pause. Come back here when you're done. All right, I'm going to read the rest of the story, and I want you to think about what kind of person Richard is as you read. So when we're done, you're going to complete this Google form, which has 2 questions. So what kind of person is Richard and how do you know? And then how do books change him? So keep in mind that this is a true story. So Richard Wright was a real person, and this is like a fictionalized account of real events. After work, Richard walked through the crowded streets to the library. He felt as if he were on a train to Chicago, as if he were traveling north already. But when Richard walked through the door, he felt the old fear again. Many heads were raised at the sight of a black boy in the library. Richard kept his eyes down, not looking up until he stood before the checkout desk. The librarian put on her glasses to make sure she wasn't seeing things. Richard handed her the note he had written and stepped back. "Why can't Mr. Falk get his own books?" she asked sharply. "He's very busy," Richard replied, his legs trembling. "All right," the woman said, "but you tell Mr. Falk I'd rather see him in person next time." Richard roamed the stacks, unable to believe there were this many books in the world. He touched the leather spines and fingered the pages he had dreamed about for such a long time. "Are you sure these books aren't for you?" the librarian asked in a loud voice when he went to check them out. Once again, heads turned, and Richard felt the eyes of white people on him. He thought he had been caught, that he would never be able to read the books he wanted so badly. But Richard told the lady what she wanted to hear, what she believed was true about all black boys like him. "No, ma'am," he said. "These books aren't for me. Heck, I can't even read." The librarian laughed out loud and stamped his books. Richard heard other people laugh as he walked out the door. That night, in his room, Richard read until the sun dimmed the electric light. He read the words of Dickens, Tolstoy, and Stephen Crane. He read about people who had suffered as he had, even though their skin was white. They longed for the same freedom Richard had spent his life trying to find. With the light of the sun coming through the window, Richard put down the book. He felt sleepy, but the words he had read echoed in his ears, colored everything he saw. He wondered if he would act differently, if others would see how the books had changed him. Richard knew he would never be the same again. That morning, he carried his books to work in a newspaper. Whenever he had a chance, whenever the office was empty for a moment, he read. Mr. Falk walked over, pretending that he was asking Richard to go and pick up his laundry for him. "What'd you get?" he asked under his breath. Richard opened the newspaper and showed him. Jim seemed shocked at first, but then a smile came over his face. "Those are powerful books, Richard," he said. "Those books will stay with you for the rest of your life. But for now," he said, looking around the office, "you should keep them to yourself." Richard tried to do just that, but as the time for the journey north came closer, he didn't care who saw him reading. The men in the office either laughed at him or asked him if he was crazy. "What's a colored boy like you toting a bag full of books around for? Your head can't hold all them big words." Every now and then, Jim smiled at him from across the room. The library books had changed some of Richard's feelings about white people. Richard still feared them, but he understood them better. The day he left for Chicago, Richard stopped by Mr. Falk's desk. "Thank you," Richard said. "Thank you for the books. Thank you for everything." Jim didn't say a word, but he shook Richard's hand in front of everybody. On the train going north, flying across the open fields, Richard remembered the books he had read. The words came back to him, the stories more real than the train itself. Every page was a ticket to freedom, to the place where he would always be free. Okay, remember you can rewind and pause if you need to read any pages over again. And the last thing you need to do is the Google form linked at the bottom of your notes slide. And just tell me which period you have me, and think about what kind of person is Richard and how do you know. So throughout the story, we learned about his family and why he wanted to read and what his plans were, to go north. So what can we assume about him? And then tell me how you know this. So what facts back that up? And then think about, how do books change Richard? So we talk about how it said like hunger for words or hunger for books. So when he did get those books and he read all those stories, how did it change him? And then make sure you click submit and you are done with this assignment. Email me if you have any questions, and remember to rewind any parts that you need to hear again.